Hello and welcome to the Slava Heroyam podcast. I'm Travis Hightower and I'm doing this for the first time on my own today. Today we'll have a topic, the main topic that we're going through of we're going to be talking about some of the Foreign Legion heroes from the United States and Canada and how you can help them out. I have a few good stories to talk about, um, and they're positive ones. But first, we'll talk a little bit about the news and catch up on some of our other subjects. So, uh, I'm not going to read the news or review the news here. My subject is on the smaller. My focus is on the smaller individual stories. I'm curious if anyone is watching in chat yet on either YouTube or Facebook Live or on Substack. Looks like all three are active. If not, or if you are, make a comment and I can share that on the screen and I'll try to answer any questions that come up. Some of the things that have been in the news is the exchange back and forth where Ukraine blew up Russian oil refineries, and um, of course, Russia attacked Ukraine and Kyiv in particular again, but they're also attacking all over the place. And it was kind of poo-pooed at the White House as kind of a well, yeah, they're at war, they're shooting at each other. I think most common sense people understand the difference between attacking an industrial center of gravity or directly attacking American, uh, you know, targets, as was done to that electric parts company. We'll get into that a little bit more here in a minute about U.S. contractors being approved in Ukraine, but this was not a military contractor, though it did make um, parts that could be conceivably used in uh, in the Ukrainian cause for warfare. Let's say, but when you're so if you're a person that is like, you know, this is their war, it's over there, that's fine. Um, in this sense, but you can't go telling Ukraine how to fight their war if you're not going to support them. And I'm seeing a lot of people both saying, "Hey, Ukraine, don't do that," um, but also I'm not going to help you with your cause. And so those two points of view very much conflict. So pick one. But everybody should be on the side of humanitarian crises. Um, there are two going on in the world right now. I am only really an expert in one of them, this one. That's why I run a podcast about it. But they are attacked every day. The civilians are attacked every day. In fact, let's check in with Zarina, who we had on the first episode of the podcast, because she's had some updates on the Kherson situation where there's the first drone siege going on. So I'm going to have let's see, visually, I should be sharing that screen. Yes. Okay. So I want to activate sound for this. I don't know if I can. There it is. Okay. Can I not make this go full screen? All right. So what you saw there is Zarina driving with a patrol of not sure who they are, but they're townspeople that are trying to make Kherson safer, and they've got drone detectors, which I didn't even know existed, to um, help people safe when they travel. And they've also set up those cope cage tunnels. Those are called cope cages when you set them up on armor or other drones or your artillery, is that you can kind of protect your drones from, or your equipment from incoming drones by having this shell of a cage around it so that the drone hits that and explodes early. And that's what that tunnel does. So right now, those folks are being terrorized because if they didn't have all that, that drone could pursue them and attempt to blow up their car, as you might have seen in their documentary. So that's going on every day. The other big bit of news was this: you had a tactical situation where it looked like Russia was going to break through with basically a motorcycle brigade. They broke through the lines, and the Ukrainians came and plugged it. Now, there's several channels that cover this that have talked about how the Ukrainians may have set a trap by allowing this gap, and in fact, they're kind of wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Sure, we set the trap, because what it does is it makes Russia extra cautious to try the same tactic again. But before I really cover that in depth, at some point I'll probably react to a Kings and Generals video. Uh, you just look them up on YouTube, Kings and Generals. They do a monthly breakdown of the tactical situation of the war. And it's one of the most, a lot of folks cover the tactics in depth, but this is the only one of the only ones that I've found that has moving informational graphics and things of that nature. So they do a really good job. So go support them. They also cover a lot of other important history. And speaking of history, since we're going to be talking today about United States and allied volunteers from all over the world, not just NATO, I want to talk a little bit about the history of the United States doing that. This war situation with Ukraine is often compared to World War II, as it should be, and even comparing it correctly in that manner should alert people to the fact of how this affects them personally over here. This isn't in Afghanistan. This isn't in Vietnam. Um, this is a situation. I can remember one big country invading a smaller one, Kuwait, and being in the sixth or seventh grade, and it was a unified celebration that we were protecting this poor defenseless country. And maybe we've grown up and grown cynical since then. But some of the things that when you fight propaganda, you can't just fight the information itself. It is about regaining trust in the ideology of what we're doing, because I think people look at Afghanistan, especially, and being detached from September 11th, wonder how we were there for so long. And that's a different story that I think needs to be covered by some veterans that were there with me, and especially after the time that I was there. So, but back to World War II, you had, this is from the movie Pearl Harbor. You had three American squadrons form called Eagle Squadrons. And, oops, am I even sharing this? Yep. See, got to get better at this. I am not sharing it. There we go. Okay. So this is not going to have sound. But 3 Eagle squadrons, they were called Eagle squadrons, and they were part of the Battle of Britain, all Americans. They were not approved by the president to be there, but they joined the British and they helped win that battle. They went on to fight in the rest of the war, of course, but they would have kept fighting even if the United States did not join completely. So that is a similar situation with Britain, of people that believed and saw that we should be involved when really the nation didn't want to get involved at that time. Whenever you have a big ocean in the way, even in today's world, it can seem like, it doesn't involve you. And there are economic aspects that always take a while to hit before anybody would make the realization. But you also have to have leaders that will explain the economic impact, the social impact, the world impact, the humanitarian impacts to you. Or you're going to have to be relying on people like Zarina, who are really there to show you the truth of what's going on. So, Eagle Squadron, that's a straightforward example. A less straightforward example were the Flying Tigers. Everyone's heard of Chenault and the Flying Tigers, I hope, if you're used to any type of World War II history. This is a good coverage by the History Channel here. And the thing about the Flying Tigers is, at first, they were considered mercenaries where the other soldiers weren't. But then they were secretly approved by the President of the United States, something that hasn't happened for Ukraine. And we'll get into that in a little bit. But for the Flying Tigers, they were a super secret squirrel operation. The president sent them in. Their P-40s were old, out of date equipment. That sounds familiar, doesn't it? And they took the fight to the Japanese and probably kept China from falling to Japan with their efforts. But the Flying Tigers, of course, were then recognized as an official unit after the U.S. declared war. But before that time, they were very unofficial. The public really didn't know about them. So that brings us to this situation where if you ever hear of the servicemen and women that have gone to Ukraine to serve in either a humanitarian capacity or as a warrior, and you hear them referred to as a mercenary, that's propaganda right there. You can start to weed out who you should listen to and who you probably shouldn't be listening to if they are not calling them by what they really are, which is volunteers. And the way we know that they're volunteers is the way that they get there. But first, I want to talk about what the United States has officially allowed as far as personnel besides weapons. In November 2024, Biden allowed contractors. Now, a lot of people think of military contracting and the military industrial complex as all these big companies, like the ones that have all the monopolies. And there are huge companies, and they are absorbing each other. That's something we need to look at in the future. But most defense contracting companies are little small companies. They are the size of a small business. They are privy to the same rewards that some administrations and sometimes and some Congresses, bipartisan, by the way, have awarded small businesses. We could talk about how small businesses are in trouble right now, or in more trouble than they would be even under a typical conservative administration. But that's not this channel. Um, what I do want to highlight is that when we started sending defense contractors over there, some of the contractors decided it wasn't enough to build weapons and help innovate weapons. They wanted to join the fight. And so a lot of the people that there's people of all different types of skills that have gone to help Ukraine. Here is one company in particular that is helping with the drone efforts we've been talking about on this channel, Defense Tech for Ukraine. I have some contacts with this company, but they can't talk about what they do. And Ben Cook has been involved with, who was in our second episode, has been involved with similar things. But drone technology and the evolution of warfare is happening very quickly in this war. So we need smart folks from all different nations helping. I had for a little while planned, and I think I closed it by accident, the official page for signing up with the Ukraine Foreign Legion. But they have several rules on there. You have to pay your own way. You have to be able to do a visa. Your visa is only good for 3 years. You've got to be between the ages of 18 and 60. And there is an application process. There is a physical fitness test. There is a background check. There is a mental health check. They've done all these things. So when you hear about the conscription type debate within Ukraine, there are units with both foreign and Ukrainian well-trained soldiers with people waiting in line to join those units. So a lot of what you hear about the new forced conscription, I mean, there is conscription and they have changed the age of it, but they're not, if you've seen reports of people being swept up in vans and then taken to the front, as Ukraine does that, that's either a very localized incident or you're falling prey to Russian propaganda. And we'll help you in this little navigation to figure out a little bit more about how these forces tend to get built and how to trust sources on army building. But Ukraine is in trouble, but they're not throwing away a generation. Russia is the one throwing away a generation when the casualty rate is 3-1, 5-1. Really, to get it to a victory type condition, Ukraine, I think we may have talked about on this podcast, they need to get it to about 8-1, because that's just how much Russia is willing to throw away. So we have these contractors. I first want to talk about Canadian. Robert Rose wrote an article on this on Mac Hughes. Mac Hughes, and I've seen other podcasters do this. So let's see. Is anybody commenting yet? No, it doesn't seem like I have any comments. I can leave a comment like, hello, everyone. Let's see if that happens. And then there's my comment. It pops up. So I'm learning how to do this a little better. Anyway, I digress. For some of you that want to download this later, the downloadable version will cut out little moments like that. But if you want the raw stream, I appreciate it, because I do get a lot of downloads to be watched later, probably so people can skip through all these little tangents I go on. I need more practice. Anyway, I've seen a lot of podcasters successfully do this. So you'll have to let me know if this is a good idea to kind of read someone's story and kind of react to it. When Canadian Mac Hughes appeared in Raw Travel TV's documentary, My Summer in Ukraine, he was a humanitarian volunteer. So in this case, rather than a contractor, a humanitarian volunteer, working alongside his father, Paul, at the NGO Paul had founded, Hugs Ukraine, helping Ukraine grassroots support. We've talked about a lot of grassroots aid programs in the past. Keep in mind this one, www.giveuao.com. Can I do that? Can I just post like a link, like a part of the chat like this? Oh, that's cool. All right. This being my first alone podcast, I can do whatever I want and learn stuff. Anyway, so you have this guy, humanitarian mission. After witnessing atrocity committed by the Russian, I like to spell Russia that way right now too, with the two Z's, war machine against Ukrainian civilians, Mac decided to join the fight. Initially, I was a tad surprised that Mac, a soft-spoken Canadian, Canadians always soft-spoken. I've met some Canadians. They're not all soft-spoken. Would join the military. Then I remembered how much danger he'd already faced as a volunteer, and his father's own courageous background. Mac's father, I think he already said that it was Paul, was a member of the Canadian military and was once a candidate for mayor of Calgary. He's a successful farmer, organizer, entrepreneur. Some of you will like the word entrepreneur. And he narrowly escaped death after he was almost captured rescuing a young Ukrainian girl. If it happened later in the war, he probably would have been tortured and killed. Now, why is that? At first, Russians didn't want to upset the international community by even killing especially a medical volunteer. They probably didn't have too much trouble killing an American warrior who had joined the fight, or even a Colombian or Canadian, anywhere they're from. They probably treated them only slightly better if they were taken prisoner. But the 2022, 2023, you would have gotten some countries mad. And if you get certain countries mad enough, you're awakening a sleeping giant. So he's captured and released. If it had happened this year, when nobody cares about the war, he'd be dead. It's just how it is. Paul founded Hugs shortly after the full-scale invasion. This article is a little bit repetitive. I didn't realize that when I first picked it up. And he makes a personal trip each year to Kharkiv, Ukraine, 2023, 24, and 2025. Like his father, Mac is of tough, resilient, stubborn stuff, and he would need to be. About 3 months into his service as a drone pilot, okay, you sort of think of drone pilots as being a little bit safer, further from the front. Not always. Mac and his team were hit with 3 massive Iranian-made Shahad drones. Biden, when he allowed U.S. contractors, the North Koreans, Iranians, Indians, they were already way ahead of us, actually, helping Russia. The Biden administration was very reactionary, helping piecemeal, which was better than nothing. But a leader needs to convince, as I said, the American public and combat the disinformation. We've been very bad at combating the distrust and earning more trust. Mac's foot was pinned under a truck. So they get hit by this big drone. Truck rolls over, pins him. A puddle of flaming diesel formed next to the truck and began moving toward him. Couldn't free his foot, and it looked like the end of the road. His teammates were also injured, but were trying to lift the truck off of him just as Mac caught on fire. As they worked to free him, Mac was in agony and begged them to shoot him. But a final miraculous push freed his foot, and they were able to extinguish Mac and evacuate him. He has second and third degree burns from the waist down. I was able to visit Mac twice. This is Robert Rose, who is someone like me, veteran who cares, that started telling the truth as often as he could. You can find him on Instagram and LinkedIn. I'm reading this from LinkedIn because the next person that I'm going to talk about connected me here. I was able to visit Mac twice in the Kyiv hospital in July. Mac was in good spirits, considering what he'd been through. And I'm happy to report that after multiple skin grafts and physical therapy, his recovery is going well. He's in a wheelchair, and he's even taken a few tentative steps, despite the bottom of his feet with third-degree burns. Ouch. He lost everything in the attack: his laptop, phone, personal belongings, and his recovery will be long, arduous, and expensive. If you'd like to help Mac, please visit this link. You can learn more about or support the excellent work that Hugs is doing at this link. And I do want to share with you guys another video. So we'll add this.
Stay in rehabilitation after nearly 2 months in hospital. The 23-year-old from Calgary is learning to walk again after he was wounded in a drone attack in southeastern Ukraine on Canada Day.
Big explosion, trapped under a vehicle, burnt legs, and my teammates pulling me out of the fire. They're all the way up to here.
Third-degree burns cover half of his legs, and the upper part is raw from where skin was taken for grafts. Mac came to Ukraine in 2022 and volunteered alongside his father, Paul. They set up Hugs, a humanitarian group based in Kharkiv. But Mac wanted to do more. He joined the Ukrainian military, and on July 1st, he says his vehicle was hit by a Shahed drone.
I knew that call when I looked at the phone. It was like 4:20, and somebody's calling me from an unknown number. You just have that, it hits you in the gut right away. And
his father has barely left his side since.
Everybody's proud of you, son. Everybody's proud of you. Everybody's cheering you on.
Mac is exhausted, and not just from the physical pain. As he lay in his hospital bed in Kyiv in July, the sounds of the record-breaking drone attacks in that city gave him flashbacks.
Still to this day, it rings through my head sometimes, and it's hard.
But Mac feels grateful because he will be able to walk on his own again. And the cherished tattoo, which he got during his first year in Ukraine,
and Canada combined,
is still very much intact.
I thought that my arm, the tattoo was going to be burnt, but they took the bandage off, and I was like, the first thing I said is, Ukraine always survives.
Well done, son.
Mac hopes to eventually resume at least
Ukraine
some of his military
survives.
duties.
I like that.
But for now, he's focused on being
I don't know
able
if I'm
to
a very
take
good
those
video
first
reactor.
small steps. Briar
That's why I don't
Stewart,
do 'em.
CBC News, Kyiv.
But, so, there's his story. It's just one story of hundreds. Not everyone's wounded, but, he's not, this isn't officially supported by either of our governments. So, Will they get the same hero's welcome that our veterans traditionally do these days? I'm very thankful that veterans are still revered. But are we trusted, especially those of us that work in the intel community? Seems like we need to earn the trust back, and we need to figure out where it went, so that people that are experts in these fields will be listened to and trusted over, say, a Tucker Carlson or somebody like that. Or, people trying to make a name for themselves. Sometimes, anyway. The other person that I want to share is his story did start out with defense contracting, Daniel. So Daniel Connery is a story of another story of he can't really talk about what he's doing, but what he has been a real advocate for is what I want to talk about at the end of this. Is there are all kinds of ways to donate and support these soldiers, especially the wounded ones. There are always wounded warrior projects to be supporting. But if you're looking for recently wounded people, this is where they're at. And these Americans, these Canadians, they don't feel like they're just fighting for Ukraine. They're fighting for you, the same way they were when we were officially fighting in Afghanistan. That is their ideology. So if you appreciate the ideology that they believe they're fighting for you, then I think you should consider helping them, as I have. So we'll talk about Protect a Volunteer and the organization that Daniel has been supporting in just a minute. But it's very international. You'll see all these countries. Whoopsies. See, I keep forgetting to add things to the stage. All right. So here's Daniel Connery. He has served in the U.S. Foreign Legion. All these countries have people fighting, and they all have been fundraisers together for Protect a Volunteer. We're going to talk about that in a minute. First, I kind of want to talk about what I can say about Daniel's story, and it's not much. He went there as a military contractor and has been helping Ukraine like so many other people that I've been talking to. And but he joined as a soldier as well later on, after he saw what was going on firsthand, the atrocities, the way the prisoners come back, the way the Russians take no prisoners, the way that I think Daniel might have been one of the folks that have talked about seeing being in a battlefield and seeing Russian soldiers get up to retreat and their officers shoot them. That's World War I, World War II type stuff that you think about and like, wow, I'm glad we're not that way anymore. Well, some things are that way, and they return. The thing about history repeating itself is we let it. So let's not let it. Daniel's trying not to let it. But the political situation is volatile. Last night, I had a bittersweet send-off, he says, and I'm still a bit shocked. After recently recommitting to protect and train our international volunteer defenders in Ukraine, I was, with genuine apologies, asked to depart the GUR Legion. I know others, especially Americans in sensitive roles, have faced similar endings, though I can't say whether it's sad but understandable policy in the light of Friday, or the military Soviet cultural regression warned by Ukrainian commanders, such as former Lieutenant Colonel Kratovich. So, the Lieutenant Colonel Kratovich is the former commander of the Ukrainian elite fighting force. So I see if people were here in the chat, they could help correct me, but it doesn't look like anyone's watching. So I'll put some text up when I remember what that unit is called. But essentially, the Ukraine's most elite fighting force. He was commander of, and this Soviet cultural fight, the regression is not a cultural regression for the entire Ukrainian culture. It's a comfort zone for a lot of the older folks in the Ukrainian military. That's one reason why you're ending up with a defensive war. But the other reason is really just practical. It is survival mode, and they are winning at the survival mode. I can't wait to break down the tactical situation. But when this war started, they were still trying to figure out their independence, and that's a lot about what that is a portion of what Tigger and I talked about last week, is how Ukraine has created something completely new. But some of the commanders, the more astute ones, are worried about regressing backwards. So they want to keep pushing forwards. Those following me, Daniel says, no, I have tactful private disagreements with my Ukrainian command regarding deviating from NATO values. Yet we always found a way to carry on, shoulder to shoulder. Perhaps that's why this decision surprised even them. We recently launched a new fundraiser. Momentum was building. The mission felt clear. And then these battle-hardened professionals who have buried too many friends let their sadness show as they broke the news. Now that I'm leaving, I can share the story of my call sign, Liz, or Mikita. Shoot. I have to have Staz help me out with that. Depending on the SIM card, drawn from Liz, it means the unconquerable fox. A beloved Ukrainian tale by Ivan Franko. At first, it was just my nod to the language and culture that adopted me. The first Ukrainian animated series made in the country since it was declared independence. So, I wonder if that has anything to do with the gray wolf, if it's part of the same cartoon. I wonder. Over time, the name felt earned. I've stepped around death more than once, for days after I left Zaporizhia. I know how to say that. Our base was obliterated. A week before I was to train new recruits, our training grounds were struck. Those losses, now public, changed me. My family says I should come home to Texas and forget someone else's war. I've already talked about how this isn't someone else's war. They don't view it that way. Same way we viewed Afghanistan, same way we viewed Iraq. This is us in protecting your freedom. And even if you don't agree with that, that's what we're doing there. That's what he's doing there. So what let's see here. I know thousands would trade places with me in a heartbeat, but truth is complicated. I can live with fear. Most of us learn to. What gnaws at me is helplessness, the knowledge that something is wrong, and the sense that leaving, I can no longer help fix it. Yes, you can, Daniel. There's always something. no matter how small, that we can do. So what comes next? I don't know. Maybe I try to live simply, dare to start a family, yet even saying it out loud carries the weight of survival's guilt, a phrase too small for what I feel, duty, respect, a tug of abandonment toward brothers and sisters who remain on the line as Russia presses its summer offensive. It's not going well for Russia. Thank you for your service. I don't think I need these anymore. Is a phrase that has worn thin with repetition at best, and is an empty platitude at worst. To the Ukrainian soldiers who taught me how to fight and survive, the volunteers and donors who kept us fed and protected, whatever life I build next, however ordinary or blessed, it's built on your courage and resilience. To the world watching from afar, do not look away. This fight is not only for a border or a flag. It is for the simple promise that free people can choose their future. If I enjoy the freedom tomorrow, it is because brave men and women are defending it today, not just for Ukraine, but for Europe, the US, and the rest of the free world. Slava Ukraini, glory to Ukraine, glory to your heroes. Thank you for that, Daniel. Turns out Daniel has a chance to join another unit before he leaves. So he's hoping for that, and I hope him well, and I pray for his safety. By the way, I pray for everyone's safety, but Daniel almost helped me get a job one time, and I hope that anyway, so he's a good acquaintance, and I hope I am able to talk to him when all this is over eventually, or if he comes home. The world is watching from afar. We're not really even that afar. And, some folks talk about, it's a 17-hour flight, what used to be a 2-week boat trip. So to get into Ukraine, you got to take a train ride. But Daniel is an American. He's thankfully been safe this whole time. There are many like him, but they need your support. Here's how. Protect Volunteer Program, making an impact. These guys aren't mercenaries. I will reiterate that over and over again. Which, by the way, I'm going to go on a tangent here for a second. There's concern about Mexican cartel people infiltrating the Ukrainians to learn how to do their drones and attack us. I talked with someone who only watches right-wing news recently, not a member of my family, just an acquaintance. And he said something to the effect of, hey, I don't hear much about the Ukraine war anymore. You're doing a podcast? Is anyone even really interested in that? I said, yeah. I wanted to say there was a big meeting in Alaska about it. Did they not catch that? But the only news on Ukraine he had recently was about Mexican cartels being in Ukraine. Well, guys, they may try. There may be some truth to that. Probably less truth, probably more propaganda than truth. But they're not going to have access to the juicy stuff. Anything they can learn in Ukraine, they can already learn home with any kid's toy drone. That's just something that every government is going to have to learn to deal with very quickly. And I'm in a business that is helping to accomplish that. But Ukraine just doesn't, as much as they need people to fight, they don't just let anyone in. They're not Russia. They're not throwing North Koreans at the front line without any training. And once you get there, you train for a long time before you go fight, even if you're accepted. And as you just saw with Daniel, sometimes the political situation is so hot that they got to let you go. They got to kick you out. And why do they got to kick you out? Well, because right now Ukraine is facing the possibility that they've been infiltrated by Russians. So they've got to increase their security. Zelensky had to, kind of shut down an anti-corruption branch, and the people protested about that. We can debate some other time about if that was the right move, but what I like is that the Ukrainian people spoke up right away. Said, hey, we don't care if we've been infiltrated. You're not getting rid of that anti-corruption stuff. We fought hard for that. Anyway, I digress. So they need flights. They're not mercenaries. They need supplies. They need tech. They need laptops. Starlink. Oh boy, we can talk about Starlink and satellites. We need gear. Guess what kind of gear they need now? Anti-drone detectors. They also need vehicles. Sometimes you'll see, this is still up, right? Okay. Sometimes you'll see projects like this one. This guy, Stephen Bear, goes around and he has each state compete with each other. Look, it's Texas against California right now to see who can donate the most for trucks and Jeeps. Not armor vehicles, but just you got to remember these battalions are like the flying tigers. The Ukrainians don't have enough equipment for all the people that are going to come in. They have to form units of foreign fighters, just like Eagle Squadron, just like the Flying Tigers. And those wars, happened to be some combat stuff around, but these units need support vehicles, and they just don't always have them. So that's why there's donations taken up for that kind of thing. But that's next level. This is what they really need. These folks that are unsupported, they're still fighting for you. Show them you believe in them. Go to protectavolunteer.com. I'm going to put it here on the actual screen. I'll always be plugging some kind of charity every time, I think. Protectavolunteer.com. Every dollar counts. You know how you get those stupid emails to support your political party of your choice and texts, and they say, just give us $5. And, I don't know, maybe that helps. I've done it before too. But I think this, you can see where your money is going to go, and you'll be able to interact with those folks and those people. For more of that, just browse this website. These heroes need your help, especially the wounded ones. And I think that brings us past our time. Well, we started at 7:15 this time, so we did pretty good. We've got dogs and cats trying to get in here with me. But I appreciate it. If you're downloading this or watching this, I'm going to remove this. There we go. Doesn't look like anybody joined me live. That's okay. I'll learn to advertise better. But for those of you that watch this later or download it, thank you. Please spread the word on this. In the future, we will have folks like Daniel. I'm hoping to get a chance to talk to some people in Kherson itself through Zarina. We'll see. I don't know how quickly that can happen. All of these things where I want to schedule people for a podcast with the individual stories, it can take a minute, and the schedule is unpredictable. And we might have some folks that we've already had back on, but look for more guests in the future. I think if we don't have a guest next week, we'll go over the tactical situation and with Kings and Generals. And then maybe sometime we can talk to those guys live. Subscribe to my Substack I'm on Blue Sky, Facebook, Substack, Instagram. You can find it all through travishightower.net. Thanks for being with me, and Slava Ukraini and Heroyam Slava. I always want to see. So that's it's like a Lord of the Rings movie. We're just going to keep going before I end it. I always want to say, something about God bless the USA. We need to get there, but that's not what this channel is about. But I don't want to give the impression that I don't love my own nation. Anyway, I think I'm inspired by what I see. I'm inspired by what I see in another nation, but it really isn't as far as we all think. Is that a good way to end it? Maybe. All right. How about I just say see you next time? See you next Thursday, everyone.